Your own background.
I don't look like
Oh, you don't?
don't look like my parents.
Could you shut that door? Thank you. All right, we're on.
Welcome to our media briefing. It's day 30 of the legislature. We're moving right along. We also welcome those who are watching us over the internet live streaming. We passed out the Senate Bill 164, which is affectionately called Healthy Utah today. Now it goes over to the House for their consideration. Senator Shiazawa's not here, but I think we've got enough people here that know enough about it. We could field any questions on that issue. We also have Senator Mattson here, who has numbered, it's 259, medical cannabis bill. So we'll entertain questions on that bill today also.
I did want
Questions?
to ask you about that. Could you move over to the hot seat next to the Senate President, please? Senator Mattson, in a nutshell, what does your bill do? And
Well, first of all, it doesn't force anybody to do anything. That's contrary to my political philosophy. What it does is it reintroduces a really small increment of freedom for willing doctors and willing patients who think that medical cannabis might be an alternative to other treatments or an augmentation to other treatments. For example, an oncologist might want to prescribe it in addition to chemotherapy to stimulate appetite, or a neurologist may want to prescribe it as an alternative to opiates that have some pretty serious side effects.
What was your inspiration for this bill?
Well, it came to me. I've had back problems, surgeries, and so forth, and I've gone to several specialists across the country over time, and a number of them were offering this as an alternative to an opioid regimen. And so that was what first intrigued me, and then it set me on research. As I've researched other back procedures and so forth over time, I started to look into this and realized that there was a lot of misunderstanding on the issue, and that there was an opportunity to really improve public policy.
have you ever tried marijuana?
I drove to Colorado weekend before last and tried that as under the direction of my doctor.
And describe the experience and what.
I think it's effective. Has effective analgesic properties. I observed a diminution in my level of pain. Frankly, at a certain point, they told me to wait and that the effects would come over time. But after a couple hours, I sat there wondering to myself, is this what all the fuss is about? Frankly, I mean, it helps, but Schedule 1, the most dangerous drug there is, I'm not sure that's really true or the basis for good policy.
How do you think this is going to fare in this session? I mean, as President Niederhauser has said in the past, you say marijuana, and people kind of get a little uneasy about that.
It has a very strong emotional knee-jerk type of reaction from a lot of folks. I think we need to push past that emotion and past much of the propaganda that's been promulgated over the years to get to the real facts. And I think once people look at it with an eye to compassion and freedom, we might change some opinions. But reefer madness is neither medical research nor public policy. It's a propaganda movie, and we can't be basing our policy on that kind of mentality anymore, I believe.
When you talk about strong knee-jerk reactions, were you once in that boat? And if so, talk about the transformation of how you.
I don't know that I was ever hostile. I mean, my philosophical perspective is inclined just to respect people's freedoms. And I believe that government is there to protect our right to pursue our happiness, not to guarantee it, but certainly not to criminalize pursuits of happiness. If an individual is not harming somebody else or harming their rights, I think that they should be able to pursue their freedom as they choose, and I think government's supposed to protect it, not hamper it. So I was never in the super bigoted hater group, so to speak. I've always tried to keep an open mind, but when it was presented to me as an alternative from doctors that I trusted, I started to look into it more seriously.
Was it your specific incident that made you decide I need to run a bill? When it affected you, then your doctor said maybe you should try cannabis.
What triggered it for me, was when we saw those kids that were wheeled onto the floor last year, the cannabinoid oil, realizing that because of misguided policy, even research has been criminalized for decades. And so I was very pleased that we were able to administer some compassionate relief to those kids, and thought, if there's other populations that can be served, if we can just push past the propaganda, it'd be worth looking into. I mean, it has been a revelation. My perspective has certainly changed, although I wasn't anti before.
What are your thoughts on recreational use of marijuana?
This bill really doesn't have anything to do with that. Recreational use certainly is going on now. And I'm sure recreational use will continue whether or not this bill is passed. It's much the same argument that I've used as I've tried to persuade my colleagues on gun control. Only the law-abiding are constrained in their choices by laws. People who are willing to use it recreationally and break the law are not going to be affected by this bill one way or the other. What we have now, we have people who are suffering. The government policy is denying them relief based on the possibility or the reality that some people abuse. And I think just because some people would misuse a firearm, we don't tell all the law-abiding citizens they can't have one to use lawfully. So I think the same principle applies here. We know people are going to use recreationally, but let's allow those who have a medical need and whose physicians feel that might be a better alternative to have that freedom. Let's not forego them that choice because others would choose to break the law.
What about your thoughts on legalized recreational use?
I'd rather not cloud this bill with that issue. I know a lot of people would like to blur the lines, but we're trying to do here what 23 other states have done before us and allow medical use. This is not a bill to go where 4 states have gone for decriminalization, and I would rather not blur those issues. Let's focus on the population of those who have a medical need that can be met.
When you were in Colorado, in what form did you use marijuana?
There was a gummy infused. It was the substance of like a gummy bear, and then there was a vape pen, I think is what they called it.
Is it something you think you'd use again? I mean, was it helpful at all, or is it...
My physician said it might be an absolute alternative to opioids as my nerves regrow and the pain ramps up, or she said it might just be something that would allow me to use a lot fewer opioids. So in either case, if my physician and I came to the determination that would be a good alternative, I would certainly do it. And if it was legal, obviously.
Is one less addicting than another? Opioid
that's a good. I appreciate you asking that question. It might even be a softball because I've mentioned this to you.
I have a lot of questions.
And that's an important point. The word addiction is thrown around a lot, and I've again put myself to studying this, and I've come to understand that you can get addicted to almost anything, and if you have a psychological predisposition, maybe even a genetic predisposition, you can get addicted to any number of substances, drugs, or even we have food addictions. We have pornography. We have gambling addiction. There's a show on TV called My Strange Addiction, and I saw a few minutes, and it was a guy that liked to lick cars. And a guy that dressed up. Okay. So that term addiction is thrown around a lot. Certainly, for those who are predisposed or have the psychological tendencies to become addicted, cannabis may be addictive, just like gambling or apparently licking cars can be addictive to some people. Now, chemical dependency is a completely different matter, and there is no chemical dependency component or element for medical cannabis or for cannabis generally. On the other hand, opiates, for example, have a tremendous chemical dependency component. And any healthy person, and I've experienced that before my surgery. I used it for a period of time. After the surgery, I didn't need it, but I went through that withdrawal. Any healthy person who's exposed to those substances for a period of time, their body will react. They'll develop a chemical dependency. That's what a healthy body does. And then it takes time to wean yourself off, or to cold turkey yourself off of that. So Addiction is a concern with any and all activities, any and all substances, and it's certainly a concern when it comes to cannabis. Chemical dependency, that side effect is not one of the properties of cannabis, and so that would be one of the reasons that people might want to consider it as an alternative.
Senator,
So those terms are
That's
important.
a new meaning to the term car wash.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was actually working in Colorado when it was first introduced there, and one of the issues that came up, how should I put it, dubious prognosis. You know, people going to their
Right,
doctor,
right.
making up ailments, and
The
getting a
hangnail
prescription
syndrome,
for it.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Do
So
they
how
do
do
it
you
with opioids?
so how do you address that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a problem with all prescribed medicines, and it's a very real concern. What we've tried to do, we've done what other states have done, and we specified certain conditions. I think there's 9 of them, including AIDS and cancer and Crohn's disease and so forth. But what we've done in addition to that other states haven't, to the best of my knowledge, is we've matched those up with specialists. So you're not just going to go to your family general practitioner and get a prescription for this. If you have cancer, oncologists prescribe. If you have Crohn's disease, an internist or a gastrointestinal specialist would provide. So we've tried to match up those itemized serious conditions with the specialties that treat them in a way to make sure that the people that really do need it are the ones that get it.
So this isn't just one of those, oh, I suffer from dizziness or whatever, and this helps me.
Right. We've tried to learn from other states. I know the governor, for one, criticized what had happened in California, and I for one, don't believe that because another state tried and got it wrong, that's a reason for us not to try at all. You know, that's poor public policy in my mind.
Senator, you went on a fact-finding mission about this. What do you see the obstacles for advancing your bill in this legislature?
I really see the obstacle as overcoming decades of propaganda and misinformation. I think, and we're going to do everything we can to try and get the good information out to people so they can make informed decisions. There will be a press conference tomorrow after the Senate hearing. We'll have people from the medical community there, people from the law enforcement community in there, and so forth, that will have participated in the hearing. But I think, there's a very interesting Department of Transportation study, for example, that seems to suggest that many of the fears about driving may not be, in fact, realized or fact-based. So if we can, again, get to the facts and have this conversation, push past years of reefer madness type propaganda, I think we'll have success.
Have you talked to the House or House members or their caucus?
Some of them,
Do
sure.
you think you have the votes? I mean, obviously, I know you're working on the Senate, but...
Right. I'm very confident about the Senate, but I can be wrong. You never know about the pressures that come to bear. I'm very optimistic about the Senate and reasonably optimistic about the House, but I have less of a hard head count.
Have you already started counting?
I've started. I've talked to many. Yes.
So you say you're confident that it'll pass the Senate or get out of committee?
I'm confident it'll get out of committee tomorrow, and I am quite confident it'll pass the Senate.
Now, going back to the dubious prescription, my understanding is one of the reasons that's less of a concern is because you have I think $100 fee that you have to get the registration card. I mean, it seems
Well,
like
we've
expensive
bumped the
that.
fee down to $25. Again, this is not a moneymaker. I'm not trying to fund some part of government. It's modeled after the carry conceal weapon permit card. The costs are not subsidized by other taxpayers, but it's not a revenue generator. The fees cover the cost of the program. We don't tax medicine in the state, and I'm not inclined to start.
When you looking at this, you said that how would this be distributed? Would this be something I had heard months ago that maybe DABC, like liquor stores? What's the mechanism for distributing this?
Okay, well, everything has to happen intrastate. The 800-pound gorilla in the room is the federal government, and we have to. While they're relatively benign now, they've issued certain memoranda, instruction to the states as to how to configure their state medical marijuana laws to avoid federal meddling. So we're going to try and abide by those as much as possible. On the commercial end, we have identified 4 components: the growers, the processors, the inspectors, or they test it. I guess the testing facility, testing lab, and the dispensaries. So we have those four elements. Each of those require very detailed tracking. The term in the industry is seed to sale. So it requires from the very time the seed is planted until the time that it goes to the patient at the end. Barcoded, scanned, tracked, and so forth. The dispensaries, they're required to be standalone facilities, family friendly. We have proactively banned T-shirt, tie-dye T-shirts and bongs with dragon's wings on them and all those
So
types
it's
of
not a
things.
head shop.
Not a head shop. In fact, it is still illegal to display or to sell any equipment that is used for the combustion of the product. The combusting cannabis is an unhealthy way to get your medicine. It is an inefficient way to get your medicine because much of medicine is burned off. It does combust the organic materials that have no medicinal value. So we want people to take their medicine in a healthy way. They can't combust it. They can't sell paraphernalia, so to speak, that would be used for combusting it.
So gummies and things like that, but no smoking.
Tinctures and gummies and the oils, yes.
So just to be clear, can some entrepreneur open up a shop in?
Well, it's designed to allow entrepreneurs to participate in this market opportunity. We have some pretty serious requirements to make sure we don't have fly-by-night operators. They have to have, I think, $750,000 liquid cash in order to set up any one of those four operations. There's an application process, background checks, and so forth.
The governor has said, Senator, that he was afraid that this issue might morph into something undesirable for the state. How do you respond to that?
I think that's always a concern. I don't know if that's a reason to deny people the freedom or the compassion that this bill would afford them. I think, again, people are using it recreationally now. I'm sure whether this bill passes or not, people will continue to break the law and use it recreationally. Only the law-abiding respect the law and deny themselves the relief that they could have otherwise because the law tells them they can't. This is designed to offer freedom and relief to those people who have serious conditions and have a doctor who thinks that this treatment would benefit them. It doesn't really touch on, again, I know that the anti-cannabis bigots and so forth would love to blur those lines and use that slippery slope argument, but it's not an excuse to deny freedom and compassion to people, in my mind. That's a public policy decision, and hopefully the governor will come around and see the light.
President Niederhauser, how do you feel about this issue and this bill?
Well, this is the first I've seen it. It's just been numbered today. I've been working with Lead Research to make sure we have a bill, and we now have a bill that we can address, and I'm sure this will be a caucus discussion here in the next couple of days, and it'll be in committee tomorrow, Judiciary
Correct.
Committee
Yep.
tomorrow.
Yep.
So the bill will start to move along. We'll have some debate, and obviously I have a lot of questions, and I know there's a lot of the senators that have those questions, and we'll try to get those answers. And Senator Madsen's a great sponsor for this. He's a well-seasoned senator, knows how the process works, and we look forward to have the communication on the bill and discussion on it.
A few days ago, though, when this first came up, you said there were concerns, or anytime that the word marijuana is uttered, there's concerns. And have you changed your mind, or are you?
Yes, it's changed to cannabis now.
Touché.
No, I mean, anytime you mention that, it's just going to raise questions. And so I think that it creates a more an atmosphere of more caution, but that's something that the bill is going to have to deal with.
One question, and I've heard that some of the senators actually went on a field trip this summer, went to California, saw how it was grown. Are you aware? I mean, I know this, I think Senator Urquhart was on that field trip. Has anybody else gone and seen how this is all regulated and grown and everything?
I don't know about that one or the other.
Okay, thank you.
President, I'd like to ask you about Healthy Utah passed the Senate today. I'm interested.
If everybody's done with me, I've got a group that I'm keeping waiting right now.
Thank
Don't
you
want
for
to
your
keep you.
time.
Okay,
All
thanks.
right, thank you, Senator.
I'm curious what you think the impact of Senate Bill 153, the medically frail plan, is now. Now that you've passed Healthy Utah, does that all but kill the medically frail plan?
Well, the bills, they're on the board, and we'll bring it up for a discussion in the Senate. We haven't really focused much on that because Senate Bill 164 has been before us. So we'll have some debate about that, but I think if I'm reading the Senate, we wanted to cover the whole 0 to 100% population, and Senate and Health Utah does that versus just the medically frail only does a subgroup of that uncovered population. But that's at least the feeling I get from the Senate and their vote and the discussions we've had in the past in caucus and on the floor.
But knowing what you know about where the House is on it, where House leaders are on it, does passing it over there make sense, or do you keep it over here in case Healthy Utah dies over there? Sort of, I guess, what's the strategic calculus?
We haven't had any strategic discussion about that.
Because if you send it over there, they could very well pass it, and that could be what you end up with.
Yes, yeah, we understand that.
Obviously.
So we'll, and they've indicated that they don't want us to send over the Healthy Utah bill, and we'll see what happens. It'll kind of depend on what happens to Senator Christensen's bill on medically frail when that comes up here. Maybe Friday, maybe Monday, somewhere around there.
You said they didn't want you to pass Healthy Utah over there. Is that what you?
Well, that's just the indications that we've kind of been getting from the House is that they weren't in favor of Healthy Utah. So.
Oh, but not that they wanted you to hold it over here.
No.
Now that it's passed here, how do you go about selling it to the House?
Well, I mean, this is it's probably not our responsibility completely. It is an issue for the Senate. As I've mentioned before, this is something that we came to independently of the governor. We had many caucus meetings. We've had a lot of debate. We've had a lot of sessions of trying to understand how this will function. And the results are what happened today and what happened yesterday with that. And so we're well educated on the issue. It isn't something that we're just doing because it's a governor's program. It's something we've independently decided was the best approach to covering the 0 to 100% population and dealing with the whole Medicaid expansion issue. That's how the Senate feels, and we've made our voice known. And so at this point, we'll be trying to move that along in the House the best we can. We don't have control over what happens over there, but we'll be advocating for that position that we had as a Senate.
I thought we had a great debate on this issue for 2 days, especially yesterday. And I think that great debate was a reflection of all of the work that has been done by individual members of the Senate to educate themselves about the Medicaid Healthy Utah plan and specifically Senator Shiozawa's bill that is a little variation with the 2-year trial period. I think all of the months that we've been talking about this and all of the discussions that we've had have really led to very educated Senate, and so I thought the debate that we had was really a good reflection of the understanding that everybody has, and it's such a complicated issue. Sometimes that's hard to get to that kind of an understanding with a body of 29 people who are trying to come to some conclusion. So I just thought it was a great culmination of a great process on that bill for us. We're going to hand it over now. We've got a very capable sponsor and see what happens to it.
Senator Okerlund, you believe that the debate will resurface at the end of this 2 or 3 year period of time, even irrespective of what happens in the House, assuming that something materializes there?
Well, obviously it will if this bill passes both bodies. There's a sunset date, and in a 2-year period of time it will resurface. We'd have to make some kind of a decision after we see the results of what we've done if we pass it. If we don't pass anything this session, this discussion's not going to go away. We're sending a lot of money to the federal government from our state. We're paying for some things that are going on across the country. It isn't reducing the deficit, this $800 million that we're sending to the federal government as a result of these taxes. It isn't reducing the debt. And so this discussion isn't going to go away, even if there isn't a decision made in this legislative session. So sure, there's going to be continued discussion one way or the other.
Senator Niederhauser, you said before the session started, I think after your caucus, that if this is the route you go, you'd like to see the monies put away in advance of the bills coming due, basically. You know, put money away this year and next year, so when the $78 million kicks in 2021. But is that still the approach you'd like to take with this?
No, with the sunset, that changed that that position. With the sunset, I think it's better that we just fund for the 2 years.
That's $25 million.
And it's $25 million. So let's fund that now. It'll get us through the trial period. And then in 2 years, now we'll face, providing this passes, we'll be faced with the decision to reauthorize it and also at the same time have the discussion on the funding. And I think it's important to have those both at the same time. And the long-term funding, we'll know more of what the program results are, and we'll know more of what it really is going to cost, the state budget. We then can have a substantive discussion. But if we never have a trial period, we'll never know how it applies to people in Utah.
Senator Hilliard, the $25 million thing, governor's office says that they can handle that out of existing restricted accounts. Is that something that you believe they can do and that you're in favor of?
We haven't identified that expressly. I know I was given that figure, and it's a wider figure. It's more than I think we really would say. I think we've got a lot of contingencies built into it, so hopefully it will not run out before the 2 years are up.
So you think you can do it without appropriating new money?
And if we do, we'll find $25 million with one-time money to fund it.
Okay.
I wanted to ask Senator Adams is not here, but maybe you know the status of the non-discrimination negotiations.
I really don't have any update on that for you today, and it'd be good to have Senator Adams here to give you an update.
They got a deadline, so yeah.
Anybody on the internet, Kirsten?
Not today.
Okay.
I just have a quick question for Senator Hilliard. The controversial Bear Lake bill, which has been stirring up all sorts of folks up in northern Utah, is now coming, the House bill's making it to the Senate now, and you've also got a competing bill in the Senate. Any prediction on what you're going to finally do with the Bear Lake access? It's caused lots of interest in readers and other folks.
I spent a lot of time on this issue for the last 2 years. In my district, I've talked to lots of people. I am convinced that Representative Webb's approach is the right approach, and that's what I'm supporting.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.